afternoon, everyone. Once again, welcome to our online Agri Conclave second session. First, we had with the management of Rallies India, and today is a very important day for us. So, my dear friends, you would agree when you protect plants, you protect agriculture. And when you protect agriculture, you ensure employment of more than 42% of Indians and ensure the India Inc. growth story plows ahead. Our guest of honor is the Chairman Emeritus of PI Industries that specializes in plant protection. So you can understand the importance of his role in employment generation and national prosperity. Mr. Singhal, we are grateful to you not only for coming to a forum, but for ensuring a greener future for us. I would like to take the honor of introducing you today. Little bit about my organization and then Mr. Singhal's introduction. Mr. Bishnu Dhanuka and Mr. Sanjay Bhavania sowed the seeds of financial independence for women 28 years ago with Millennium Mams. Please be on mute, everyone. A non-profit organization that empowers us through financial literacy. We try to understand the sectoral prospects in light of the current economic climate and invest in those sectors that have a fertile future. PI began its illustrious journey with edible oils in 1946 and was founded by Mr. P.P. Singhal, father of Mr. Salil Singhal, PI Industries Limited, with headquarters at Udaipur, Rajasthan. PI is in the business of agrochemicals and solutions and fine chemicals, contract research and manufacturing services, CRAMS. Mr. Singhal has over 40 years of experience in plant protection and is credited with the adoption of a global outlook and ingraining a strong value system within the company. His business interests include agrochemicals, fine chemicals, electronic metering device services and solutions, mining and mineral processing. PI Industries employs 8,000 people with the research development section, alone having 800 employees and innovation, and does business in over 50 countries. He's also in the board of Volchem India Limited, the world's largest producer of mineral wollastonite and India's leading producer of calcium carbonate, having its mining and production facilities in 6 Indian states, and Secure Meters Limited that has pioneered electronic metering for the power industry in India and is now internationally recognized for its innovation with subsidiaries in the UK, Sweden, and Australia. He's also the Chairman Emeritus of Crop Care Federation in India. He's the recipient of numerous awards like Entrepreneur of the Year, Life Sciences and Agrochemicals for 2014 by Ernst & Young and Lifetime Achievement Awards, Rajasthan Ratna by CNBC Awaz News Channel, to name a few. You would all agree that to get India back on track, it's important that the government should come up with the right policy initiatives. Before we start this much awaited session, I would like to take the honor of announcing the launch of our Chanakya group today that has taken up the initiative of sending memorandums based on extensive research for the growth of various sectors to the government. And the first sector they have taken up is agriculture. And sir, we would like to seek your blessings for the success of this group. And without much ado, I would like to invite Mr. Salil Singhal for his keynote address, followed by Q&A moderated by my colleague Srinidhi. Sir, over to you.
Thank you, Rachna. That was a rather long introduction. And the first and foremost, I'm very impressed by the fact that Dhanukaji, you started an initiative which I think is an outstanding one. When our women get empowered and can manage their husbands better, they're bound to get better results for the country as a whole. And the ability to invest and be part and parcel of the economic growth rather than spending monies on clothes and jewelry, I think is a path-breaking thing. And I must congratulate you all, young and old ladies, for this enterprise. And I really wish you all the best. I heard about the Chanakya group, and I'm not sure Chanakya is a very good word. You know, it has many connotations. But the fact that you will do in-depth research, work on ideas and approaches, I think it's an excellent idea, and it will be my pleasure in whatever way I can be helpful. You will be most welcome. Just to make a few corrections, my business experience now is more than 50 plus years rather than 40. Oh, and wow. The 8,000 is the number of our group employees. PI has something like about 3,000 employees. So, and of course, the research focus is very strong. I had the pleasure of receiving a set of questions which I was told would be required to be addressed. And I thought nothing better than to tell you a bit, answer some of those questions while I address you all. And I'm really truly honored that you have chosen to invite me. And I'm very pleased that I'm talking to you. Well, you know, as she mentioned, that while PI as a company was registered way back in 1946, prior to the Independence Day, the fact is that agrochemicals business was started in 63, 64 by my father. And in the good old days, the story was when I joined business in 65, 66, the story when I would travel and somebody sitting next to me in the plane or in the train will ask me, "Aap kya karte hain?" And I would say, "Ji, pesticide ka kaam karte hain." "Ye kya hota hai?" So that was a big question that was always asked. And I said, "Aapke ghar mein DDT lagta hai मच्छर के लिए?" तो बोलते थे, "हाँ हाँ." तो मैंने कहा, "उसको हम पेस्टिसाइड बोलते हैं." तो जैसे मच्छर आपको और हमको खाने घर में आते हैं, उसी तरह से कीड़े कपास को खाते हैं, गेहूं को खाते हैं, चावल को खाते हैं। जैसे आप और हम बीमार होते हैं, वैसे डिजीजेस लगती हैं। और जैसे गेहूं के साथ और धान के साथ दूसरी घास भी उगती, जो आपने देखा हो खेत में फार्मर लोग निकालते हैं, उसको वीड्स लगते हैं। उन सब की दवाइयां हम लोग पेस्टिसाइड्स कहते हैं। और आज की तारीख में लोग कहते हैं, ये क्या बला है, हम सब बीमार हो रहे हैं, हम सब मारे जा रहे हैं। These must be banned in the country. We must go organic. So, you know, you see the change that has taken place in 50 years. But the fact is that globally, the agrochemical industry is worth about $65 to $67 billion today. And India's share in that business is around 6.5 billion, 6 to 6.5 billion. So we are doing about approximately 10% of the global business. And in that 6.5 billion, I'm very happy to tell you that 50% plus business is in exports. So the pesticide industry, or what we sometimes call the agrochemical industry or crop protection solutions industry, is a net exporter industry for India. And I think that's a matter of pride. Coming to, so this is the major factor about agrochemicals. Rachna did mention about the importance of agrochemicals. You should know that at least 30 to 35% of the crops are annually destroyed because of pests, diseases, and weeds. So every loaf of bread you eat, one out of 2 loaves that you eat, 1 loaf has been taken away by pests and diseases. So despite this use of agrochemicals, this pressure of pests, which are what we call biotic pressures, remain all the time on agricultural crops. There is also another market for about $7 billion for household pests, which I think we are all familiar with and you understand the need for it. So it's just not the mosquitoes and malaria, but it is also the daily problems that we have, the what you call the knockout and all that you plug into your electrical systems is ultimately is a pesticide. And a pesticide is something which kills pests. The industry has undergone major changes worldwide. It started with DDT. It was one of the first inventions by Bayer. And in fact, DDT became the bad boy for the world and it was banned. But we should not forget that because of DDT, 500 million lives were saved from malaria. You will be interested to know that in the Second World War, DDT powder was actually put into the hair to save the soldiers from termites and lice. They were laid on the ground where they could put their beds so that termites would not eat away their beds and eat into them. So this is what this agrochemical industry has done. And it continues to grow. And huge changes have taken place in the biology and chemistry of this industry. As you know, as I mentioned about the problems of safety and people getting worried that chemicals are polluting our foods, they are causing cancer. This has been one of the biggest accusations against agrochemicals. Let me assure you that there is nothing of this sort. All pesticides in the world are duly registered. And let me mention here that it is one of the most regulated industries anywhere in the world, along with the regulations that are imposed, for example, on the nuclear industry. They have to undergo a huge amount of evaluation for their safety and for their efficacy. And safety is done by toxicology. Toxicology means the science of poison. So every pesticide is assumed to be a poison because it is meant to kill, but it should kill what it needs to kill and it should not affect those whom it should not affect. That is what the science of toxicology does. And just to put you in the right perspective, to get a new molecule registered for the first time and commercialize it from the time of invention, and it's really not an invention, it's a chemistry discovery. There's a difference between invention and discovery. You discover a new molecule, the time is about 10 years. It takes about 140,000 molecules before a pesticide molecule is discovered. 140,000 molecules are evaluated. Then the toxicology, bioefficacy, formulation, packaging, safety, and all those data that is required to be generated takes between 8 to 10 years. And the cost comes to around $300+ million, which is around about 2,000 crores. So you can imagine 2,000 crores of expenditure spread over 10 years with 140,000 molecules under evaluation. The task is not easy. And to conclude this point, this is one of the reasons why some of the giants of the pesticide business have merged, because they spend 8 to 10% of their costs on research, and the costs are so high that unless you come to scale, so now there are only the big 5 that are left in the world. So Bayer, BASF, Corteva, FMC, there's one more, and this Chinese company, Syngenta. And then there are a couple of very interesting Japanese companies who do things also in the similar efficient way, and there are so molecule discoverers now in the world are just about 10 to 15 of them, around 10, 12 of them. So you can understand where this whole business is focused on in terms of research and development. But as you know, today, because of that research and development and focus on safety, the focus of the entire research has shifted more to safety. And there was a time where you required 2 kilograms of the product to be applied in 1 acre to control the pest or the disease. Today you have pesticides where you only apply 10 grams, but 20 grams in 1 acre of land. So the challenge is how to mix it in a way that the farmer can apply it to the whole 1 acre, just 10 milligram, 10 ml. You know, something that you see in your eye drops, they are also 25 ml. So you just imagine, and this is so that the load on the environment can be reduced. So this is the background to where the safety parameters have gone. I can say it with all confidence and responsibility, there are pesticides which are safer than salt. If salt was to be put through the entire toxicology data generation, then you will find many pesticides are safer than salt. And the last point I want to make on this, which I want all you housewives and you investor ladies to understand, a misunderstanding about this agrochemical pesticide business is about their toxicity, about the danger they pose. The danger is never in the product. The danger is in the dose. You all carry your mobile phones in your handbags and in your pockets. It has electricity, because without electricity, it will not work. But touch a 440 volts wire, and what happens? It's the dose. You take 5 grams of salt with your poha, that's fine. But increase it to 50 grams and you see what it'll do to you. So please understand the safety of any product is based on its dosage. And that's why we in the agrochemical industry understand that, and we work assiduously to see how we can reduce the load on the environment, reduce the toxic symptoms, and yet ensure the best of it. So in fact, the large companies are inventing new chemistries. They're working on completely new chemistries. And that is what is happening. And I find my time is over because I've just given you all the bhashan on what the agrochemical industry is about. But I don't think it's been a waste of time, because I'm sure there would be many interesting things that you might have heard for the first time.
Yes, absolutely, sir.
So as I said, in PI, we began this journey in 1964-65. It was in the middle of mid of 90s that I decided to go into custom synthesis and manufacturing in agrochemicals, because this is one of the questions that has been asked to me, that explain the business and what motivated you. Well, let me tell you that only 2 factors motivated. And these are true for any business. And when you invest, I dare say, look at these 2 factors in any company. That we had 2 strengths in our organization. PI, in its life journey from 63 to 90s, about 35 years, had 2 strengths. One was our reputation as a reliable, dependable business partner. And the other was our investment in research and development, which had been initiated by my late father. He was incidentally an MSc first class from Allahabad University. And he was a strong believer in research and development. So it was in 1976 that PI got its registration with the Department of Science and Technology as an approved research and development center of India. So R&D was approved by the government of India in 1976. We were one of those early birds. And we were doing a lot of inner research. And I thought that and I used to travel. We represented 2-3 Japanese companies in India for representing their products. We used to import their products, formulate and sell it in India. And we had a tremendous reputation. If we committed to buy, say, 100 tons, it never went 99. And that was the reputation we had. And the company within India and abroad always enjoyed a reputation for outstanding its ability to honor all its commitments and do the business in the most transparent manner. So I said, these are our 2 assets. So I contacted some of our Japanese associates and I said, I know that manufacturing in Japan is expensive. Can we manufacture some products for you here? And that's where our journey in CRAMS, as we call it, Custom Research and Manufacturing Systems, began. And it was a very, very tough uphill task, because for a Japanese company to trust an Indian company for the first time with this know-how, give it to us, the ability of the Indian company to deliver. That was a very, very tough journey. And the first break came, we contacted one of the top companies there, Sumitomo Chemicals. And ladies and gents, let me tell you, it took me 2.5 years before we could conclude the agreement. And for a small contract of $670,000, a figure I will never forget, because that was our first business. And that was spread over delivery for 3 years. And at that juncture, it required an investment of 5 crores. And I had to borrow monies because PI was a small company, not even with 100 crores of turnover, 200 crores of turnover. And what we borrowed monies, it was very easy because as far as the banks and institutions were concerned, they were always a phone call away, given our reputation. And as we were putting the facilities, we got a call from Mitsubishi Corporation, our agents there, and they said, look, there is a very complex herbicide which the Japanese company they are getting it from France and China. France is very expensive, China quality is bad. Can you do something? So I said, okay, let me know. So we put that job to our research and development team. And I am so proud to say that those two guys, Abid and Chandrasekhar Sharma, they put together this molecule within 2 months. And it was a 14-step chemistry. I mean, I do not know how many of you understand that, but the complications of 14 steps of chemistry is a huge thing. Like आप चाय बनाते हैं, उसमें भी 3 स्टेप लगते हैं. गर्म पानी चाहिए, चाय की पत्ती चाहिए, फिर शक्कर डालना है, फिर उसमें दूध डालना है. वो भी 4 स्टेप होते हैं. और वो कितने सिंपल होते हैं. फिर भी 2 कुक्स अलग-अलग बनाते हैं, तो एक की चाय अच्छी लगती है, दूसरी की अच्छी नहीं लगती है. आप समझ लीजिए कि from that simple example, I go to the complexity of 14 steps. It was a massively complicated story. And my guys got very excited out there and they said, send us the sample. And this was a problem to send samples. Luckily, it was a powder. So you know what we did? We made them into patla plastic bags, put them in our company catalogs, made a pile of 10 catalogs and shipped the catalog to the Mitsubishi for publicity. And we told them they are stapled inside the catalog. So you can understand the emergency that existed on the other side. And I'm very proud to say our samples got accepted. And they said, we are willing to give you orders for 10,000 kilograms at a price of $80 a kilo. So how much was the value? $8 million. I was very excited till I talked to my R&D team and my engineers. They said, sir, इसमें 25 करोड़ रुपया लगेगा फैक्ट्री लगाने के लिए. मैंने कहा यार 25 करोड़ रुपया 10 टन के पीछे कैसे लगाएंगे, मैं बात करता हूं. So I went back to the Japanese. I said, can we have a long-term contract? Would you agree that if we supply you good quality, you will give us X quantities in the coming years? And the answer was no, a clear no. You give us 10 tons, 10,000 kilos. If we are satisfied, we assure you, you will get priority. Can we get a contract? No. Now, I was in a very big fix. My CFO told, sir, मर जाएंगे, किसी वजह से नहीं बना तो क्या होगा? इतना complicated काम हमने life में नहीं किया है. So my R&D team, my engineering team, बहुत दिमाग लगाया एक दूसरे के साथ. And ultimately, as you know, the buck stops on the table of who? So I told my CFO, I said, 20 करोड़ रुपया तो मिल जाएगा. बोले सर आप कहेंगे तो 50 भी मिल जाएगा. आपके नाम से तो मिल जाएगा. लेकिन सर रिस्क कितना बड़ा है? तो मैंने कहा चलो, we'll take the risk. So ladies, we put up that investment. We got price of $80. We manufactured the product in time. We got the quality. And the cost, the direct cost of manufacture was $75. अभी वो 20 करोड़ रुपए का डिप्रिसिएशन, ब्याज, इंटरेस्ट, EBITDA भी नहीं आया उसमें पूरा. But I have to tell you, my Japanese stood by and we got an order for 60,000 kilos, 60 tons at $78. And I have to say with great sense of pride, my team, the production of that 60,000 kilos, 60 tons, the cost of manufacture was $45. That is what R&D can do. That is what focus can do. That is what taking a business risk can do. But I'm not at all advising you all to do that, but please understand what are the possibilities. And that is how the CRAMS business became a business focus for PI. And today I'm very happy to say that we are recognized internationally by every company globally for our research. 99% of our manufacturing of CRAMS is in the patented scheme. It is on the patented area. That product was not patented. But later on, we were supplying 80% of the quantities to the Japanese, and we made very good money. And that also gave us a very good reputation because the quality was consistent. It was being so given out to a lot of other formulators, and it always had our little name there, manufactured by PI Industries, make in India, made in India. So we had that pride because that is required legally by Japanese companies. So our company became known. And we did aggressive marketing. We put up a Japanese office. And today, as they say, it is history. And typically today, we have about 15 to 20 molecules in our laboratories for evaluation for custom synthesis. And every year, we do 1 or 2 new molecules. And as on date, PI has about $1.5 billion worth of orders in hand for custom synthesis to be delivered in the coming next couple of years. So there is a very good, clear visibility of the CRAMS business for PI. And that is where it began. Coming to the Indian agriculture sector, whatever businesses we have done, we enjoy an excellent reputation with our farming community. We are known for our quality. We are known for our extension services and for the product stewardship that we bring to the table. And unlike most agrochemical companies, PI is very, very limited in its number of molecules that it markets. And in almost 80% of the molecules, we are either the number 1 in the market or within the first 3 in the market. So therefore, our range is small. If PI was to triple the range, probably we would be the biggest seller of molecules. But that's not the objective. We want to remain a very strong research-based and specialty products company, and we continue to focus on that sector of the business. And that's the story of the company. I have exceeded my time, Rachna. Don't shoot me, but shoot questions now.
No, sir, it's absolutely fine, sir. Thank you so much for sharing your journey. It's been a very, very interesting journey, sir, and it shows your passion and your vision, sir. So,
thank you.
Yeah, sir. So now I would like to invite Srinidhi.
Yes, Rachna.
Yeah, Srinidhi, you can take over.
Good evening, Mr. Singhal. It's been a pleasure listening to you. So, sir, at this juncture, you mentioned how you were proud about the Made in India tag, and we feel the agrochemical sector in India is going to get huge opportunity because of the China disruptions, the Blue Sky policy, the China +1, and emphasis by the government on vocal for local. So, your take on that, please, if you could tell us a little bit.
You're absolutely right. To be honest, I never began this business on that contention. But now, as time has unfolded, there is indeed a lot of interest in Indian companies for this business. And I dare say that the fact that we began this business has attracted a lot of people to look at this opportunity. And don't forget that it is just not in the sector of patented molecules, because sharing know-how on patented molecules is a very, very sensitive issue. How many people would like to share their information? So the selectivity of such partners is very limited. And given the fact that we have maintained such a reputation, because if today you ask me who are your customers, I will never name them. You may find out, but I will never name them. But there are, as I said, there are 1,000 commercially available molecules. And many of these multinationals or these what I call molecule discoverers, where patent has expired, manufacture these products many other parts of the world. China has been one of the major ones. So there are a lot of companies now looking at India. And let us remember that in the last 10, 15 years, the fine chemical industries India has also exponentially grown. Since you ladies are, you girls and ladies are, I can say that to you because I'm 75 years old. So you ladies and girls can understand. If you look at the statistics, chemical industry has delivered the largest return on investments, around 17% in the last 10 years. So there has been an exponential growth. That growth has given it a stronger base to build on that infrastructure of the building blocks of the chemical industry and take it into making agrochemicals, pharmaceuticals, fragrances, leather chemicals, and the whole gamut of products. So only thing is the challenge of our regulatory processes and the delays that take place in putting together the investments on the ground. The key to my mind in all this is that industry who wants to invest in this has to have a proper good reputation for being transparent and delivering on time. Because ultimately, what does a customer need? He needs quality, he needs the quantity that he has ordered, and he needs it on time. And it is my belief that if you do this, you cannot fail. I mean, we tell our customers, you will have to pay us $2 a kilo extra. Because the kind of reliability that you get from me, if you get it from elsewhere, come back to me. And invariably they pay us. Because the cost of not delivering on a patented molecule where he has spent $300 million to invent and research, and we can't deliver it to his market when he has spent another $100 million to market it and he can't get the product in time. Just imagine what will happen to him. That $2 have no meaning there. So, and this is the crux of business. Nothing new. But unfortunately, not many Indians follow this. And this is my take on business. You want to succeed, do it right.
Thank you. Can I have Shweta for a question?
Yes, good evening, sir. So my question is, for your contract manufacturing, where is the raw material coming from? Is it coming from China? If yes, how much is your dependency on that? And if not, how are you expanding it, sir?
See, as I just said, there is a lot of chemical manufacturing happening here, number one. Number two, our effort is always to go as back as possible in backward integration for manufacture, because this helps to reduce costs. And yet there are some chemicals which are so cheap that we even outsource it to Indian manufacturers. We say, you just make this intermediate for us. And yes, we must not forget, and I do not know how many of you know this, but 35% of global manufacturing comes out of China. And if 35% comes out, you can't do without something coming out of China. So we also import from China, but fortunately, our dependence is only 10 to 15%. I think it is not more than that. You have to understand my figures are not very good, but I do know it is not substantial because it has not affected our business. And I must be honest, I'm not even on the board of the company. I learn of the results of my company from the newspaper advertisements that come. I have completely withdrawn myself from the business, but I understand that this is what it is.
So I have a query, one more query, sir. The initial starting point, like where you start your manufacturing for the molecule, is it being sourced from China or is it available in India even?
See, we are not making one product. We are making tens of products. So most of so it all depends on what product it is and what raw material you require. And as I said, if the dependence is not more than 10 to 15%, it is not very worrisome. And it is also possible to substitute it. And we should not forget In as much as we don't want to import from China, it is as much important for China to export it, and it is as much important. Ultimately, we are part of the global ecosystem. And ultimately, I think the world will have to recognize this, that we will have to be, there are many things on which Chinese are dependent on Indians. So it has to be a two-way street. But as I said, overall for the PI as a company, it's not a very serious issue. Unlike pharma, where a lot of APIs, or active pharma ingredients are coming from there, for example, for antibiotics.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Namita, can you come in, please?
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Sir, my question is on your foray into pharmaceuticals and the specialty chemical side. I know you've done something in the area of COVID, you've supplied your first order. Now, what is your vision for these two areas, sir? How do you see this grow in tandem with your CRAMS business, sir?
Namita, as I said, I don't even sit on the board to know what the hell that board is thinking about. But I can answer this question in a different way. We are working on the principles of transparency in business, top quality, international ability to compete at international prices. We have the skills, we have the people, we have the corporate philosophy. And so, and the clear message in this is that whatever we will take up in pharma or specialty chemicals will be in very, very niche, research-oriented segments. So that we can leverage our existing strengths. I mean, we have a very strong R&D facility with about 300 people working there. I dare say this is one of the best anywhere in the world. And I'm quoting several of our international customers who come here and who see this. A vice chancellor from the Israel Tel Aviv University had come. He said, "Wow, can I join your company in the R&D here? I haven't seen an R&D facility like this." I felt very proud, and more than proud, I felt very satisfied that we have done something good.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Sonali, can you come in next, please?
Sir, my question is more on general, say, agriculture. A lot have been talked about development of agriculture in India. So can you say which country we should clone or follow to go to the next milestone, sir?
Well, you see, agriculture should be viewed in terms of the productivity per acre of land. That has to be our measure. You know, what we call benchmarking everywhere. You say, if you look at cement companies, which is the cheapest per ton manufacturer of cement? And all the other cement companies say, देखो भाई Shree Cement ये कर रहा है. तो अगर उसका energy cost आता है, say 100 units per ton, हमारा 125 क्यों आ रहा है? And so that is really the benchmark. And really you don't have to follow the other countries, but to see how we can achieve that. Now, having told you about, and again, this is a matter of knowledge. For example, if we look at pulses, which we import very interestingly from Canada. Are you aware that we import substantial quantity of our dals from Canada?
No,
I'm not
Canada,
sure
have not, no.
Not many of you will know this. This is interesting. Now, the Canadian output is around 1,800 kgs, 1,800 kgs per hectare. Our average comes to 800 kgs. Now, the question is, can we get to 1,800? But the answer there lies in the fact that when the Canadians grow their dal, that's the only crop they grow once a year. So their soil remains dormant under the winter. It is very well taken care of. But in India, the soil has to also grow after dal, the gehu, the bhutta. There is a 2-crop season, there is a 3-crop season. So the poor soil is being extracted by other crops. So the dal may not get the kind of nutrition it needs from the soil. Then we feed it with a lot of other soils. There is a lack of carbon in the soil. So that affects the yield. So there are many connected factors. But I have to say that we have done very well, in terms of a lot of yields have improved. But at the same time, there is a long way that we have to. There is a long way we have to go. So if we reach those levels, we would do very well.
Thank you, sir.
Jyoti, can you come in? Jyoti Barlia.
Good afternoon, sir. So my question is regarding research and development. So you have already told that it requires a lot of investment and time. So why aren't other companies doing, more of research and development in India, sir? Why are we more dependent on China for the molecules, sir?
No. China has not invented very many molecules.
Okay.
Firstly, be very clear about that.
Okay.
There have been very few molecules developed, and they have been developed by the universities there, supported by government funding. So if you go back to my points, Jyoti, that there is $300 million for 10-year period.
Yes,
There is no Indian chemical balance sheet which can afford that in the agrochemical sector. So inventing a molecule in India is not going to be, it's not an easy job. That's the problem.
Thank you, sir. I got it.
But let me add here for the benefit of all of you. Once a molecule is discovered, there is a lot as Indians we can do to improve the cost of manufacture by improving the processes, substituting the raw materials, reducing the waste load, bringing about better safety, changing the solvents. And that is where companies like PI, which are so heavily invested, become a very good partners with these multinationals, where we work with them on these areas.
Thank you so much, sir.
Neha, can you come in?
Yes. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
My question is regarding the impact of the 3 Big Bang reforms in Indian agriculture: the Essential Commodities Act, Contract Farming, and APMC Act. Which of these reforms, in your opinion, has the most far-reaching impact for the agrochemical industry?
Well, to be honest, they are all connected with each other. And if you look at the ECA and the APMC Act, they are primarily meant to take care of post-harvest challenges that the farmer faced. Now, industry and business can directly connect with the farmers. And I feel ashamed to even mention this, but unfortunately, that's a fact. Indian farmer was the only Indian who had no freedom to sell what he produced. Can you imagine? Poor fellow. And he had no way to go to the courts. You and I, if you produce anything, I can sell it to anyone I like. But the poor farmer, this is what it did. Now, what this will do is bring a lot of agri companies into the business. And as you know that in the last 10 years, agriculture has received a lot of focus. So large companies from ITC, which began their journey in agri about 20 years ago under Yogi, my old friend, and they did a phenomenal job. So when you look at ITC, Mahindra and Mahindra, Godrej, Reliance, Cargill has been here for many years, and there are several other companies which have come here. Now they will directly work with the farmers to improve their productivity, ensure them the market, de-risk their marketing. Otherwise, mandis were doing nothing. And in fact, the mandi traders were only manipulating the system. Did you know, for example, that the Azadpur Mandi of Delhi had only 10 licensed merchants?
Wow.
And by law, no new licenses could be granted. The second fact, the entire business was in cash. That's why, my dear ladies, the tomato by the farmer was sold for 2 rupees, but you and I paid 25. Now you know where the money went. This what will change. And the moment this changes, it is bound to have a direct impact on input suppliers. They will buy better seeds, they'll buy better pesticides, they will invest more in understanding combinations of fertilizers, they'll go for mechanization. So the whole technology uptake will become better because the ability of the farmer to earn more and spend more will grow.
Thank you so much, sir.
Can we have Vinita Pitti?
Namaskar, sir. It was so beautiful what you said, truly inspiring, and the good intentions. I needed to know what are your opinions on genetically modified products?
I am very clear that India is losing a great opportunity by not adopting the GMO. And I can just give you two clear examples. When we did accept the cotton GMO, it completely changed the scenario for cotton. Our productivity went up 40%, our exports went up, and cotton farmers earned huge amounts of money. Unfortunately, when the last agriculture minister interfered in this whole game plan, put restrictions on the trade, TRAIGH, the trade fees, which was to be paid by Monsanto by every seed holder. He put restrictions there and ultimately drove out Monsanto from India. They wound up their R&D and they said, we are not going to come with the next one. Here it is important for all of you to understand that once you have given a pest resistant seed, nature being what it is, that resistance to that resistance develops and newer problems develop. And that is where human resilience and human ingenuity comes in, to look at and discover newer options to control that. So Monsanto had already come out with its Bollgard 2. The first seed was called Bollgard 1 and the second seed was Bollgard 2. So when seed Bollgard 2 was to be brought in, this restriction came. So they wound up shop and went away. What is the situation today? Hundreds, thousands of kilograms of this seed has been smuggled into India. Maharashtra, Haryana, Gujarat, all over the place, Bollgard 2 is being used. Has that restriction helped? On the contrary, now it's being done unscientifically. Similarly, our friend Mr. Jairam Ramesh went to Karnataka, called a public meeting, and he said, "Ye बैंगन हम बेच सकते हैं कि नहीं GMO का?" No, बंद हो गया. What is the situation? In your Bengal, a lot of GMO seeds are coming from Bangladesh because they approved it. A lot of Bengal farm, and by the way, Bangan is one of the biggest vegetable grows in Bengal. West Bengal is one of the largest acreages for brinjal. And are you aware that there are 84 varieties of brinjal? Sorry, 34 varieties of brinjal. Just for your information. 34 varieties of brinjal having different kind of pests. So they made the GMO for Bengal, for Bangladesh. Now that seed is coming in smuggled in. So where is the point of controlling it?
But sir, they say that once you use these GMO seeds, then your ground cannot take other seeds again. So you get dependent on those companies like Monsanto that supply these seeds.
That's not true. Scientifically wrong and completely a false information. The fact is, Monsanto was looking at that seed, but they realized that there was a worldwide agitation against this. So they never came with it. What you're saying is, again, let me explain this. If you have a small farm, you keep drawing the seed from the same fruit and put it back and back and back, you will see that your yield will gradually go down. That's the rule of nature. So therefore they say get new seeds. We call it F1, F2, F3. First time, second time, third time. So it loses its potency for growth. So in the case of GMO, you have to always plant new seeds. But it does not mean that you cannot plant anything else or you cannot plant non-GMO seeds. So there is a difference. You cannot use the same plant for putting another GMO because you will not get the growth, but you can put anything else, no problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Rachna, can you please come in with your question?
Yeah, sir. So agriculture's contribution to GDP has been steadily declining from 18.2% in 2014-15 to 16.5% in 2019-20. And trend shows that it was 50% in 1950. Sir, so do you think this trend will change in the future with more agri startups, major agri reforms? So what are your views on it?
You see, to me, Ratna, statistics are of no consequence here.
Mm-hmm.
Today's world, India has 55% services industry.
Mm-hmm.
Manufacturing is contributing 22%. So ultimately, what is economic policy about? It's about two things.
Mm-hmm.
It's about a full stomach and about a good quality of life for its citizens. To my mind, it doesn't matter what percentage it contributes to the economy. If you look at some of the countries in Europe, for example, the Scandinavian countries, by design, they discourage agriculture. Because with 10 billion population, their ability to import from anywhere in the world is very easy. So why go through the grind of working on agricultural fields? But India can't do that, given the size of its population, size of its life. So what we really have to concentrate on is, as rightly said, more crop per drop. That's what our real game has to be.
Mm-hmm.
And secondly, if you look at the trend of agriculture vis-a-vis industry, trade and commerce and services, about 150, 200 years ago, every country was 100% agriculture-oriented economy. Whether it was States or Europe or Japan or today, what is the percentage of agriculture population involvement? 2%, 4%, 5%. But they say in America, industry can fail, agriculture cannot. That's how they have created, because they want the citizens not to go hungry. So if that should be the strategy, the policymakers have to think of getting people away from the farms. Because I can tell you, if you were to talk to the youth of India today in agriculture sector, 70% don't want to work in the farms. Why do you think there's so many migrant workers? They had all the opportunity, but they don't get what they can get in the cities out there. That's why the growth of slums, that's why because of the unplanned growth and the mindset that humko agriculture walon ko kheton mein hi rakhna. That mindset must change. Then technology will come, automation will come, the contract farming issue was raised, those issues will come into play. So the plow will be replaced with tractors, then people will be replaced, artificial intelligence will come, and they can make, those population can make contribution in other areas of our economy.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Paridhi, can you come in with your question? Anuradha Kanoria, can you come in with your question?
Of course. Yes, sir. Due to the recent reservations against someone else, I don't know, someone else came in the middle. How are you? Okay, fine.
Yeah. Oops, again gone.
Okay. Bhaiya, I wanted to take you away from business and industry and ask you, how was the experience of the Ram Janmabhoomi?
Oh my goodness. It was mind-boggling, it was very emotional, and it was very humbling. I cannot describe it. I mean, to have this fortune is only due to the blessings of my late Chachaji and God's will. That I was there, that I had the unique honor. I think the only man who can ever have this honor, and me and my wife Madhu, that we did the puja of each shila, that we placed the shilas in the foundation, and we placed the chandi ki brick, and we did all the ceremonies that required. So it was indeed absolutely mind-boggling.
Amazing.
Very humbling.
Seeing you, we felt that we were part of it.
Yeah.
I am so happy. In fact, I must tell you, since you mentioned it, I took 5 silver coins with me for different people, and at least 2 coins I said all my family, friends, and persons who know me, on their behalf, I place it, God, and I'm getting very emotional talking to you, that I place it under your feet and for your blessings to all of them. Honestly. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That is actually very touching. And if you have some more time, could we take one or two last questions?
Yeah, you're welcome. I am available for another 15 minutes.
Okay. Let's continue, Srinidhi.
Yes. Yeah. Sirisha, would you like to come in?
Yes. Wrong place in the queue. So after such a lovely question, my question is not that interesting. But so I'd like to ask you, I mean, sorry, but I'm bringing you back to the business, but my question is on the regulatory of the sector, sir, is that, you have explained about the molecule being launched, but on a running, as a student, I want to know when on a day-to-day running or on the, on the business side, what kind of cost implication does following regulatory policies have, on a yearly basis, if you can tell me? I don't know if I framed it correctly.
I'm not sure exactly what you mean, Sarita, but if you mean that...
Sir, what I meant is the regulatory policies that government keeps introducing, does it have a large cost implications on a regular running of the business of agrochemicals or the chemical sector?
Well, it depends on what costs are you looking at. If you're looking at bribery and corruption, that's part of India's ecosystem. So that's a regular cost I think every industry pays, and I have no hesitation in saying that. There is in terms of other regulatory costs, let me clearly say that when you want to get a new molecule to be introduced in India for the first time, you have to go and register it under the Insecticides Act. So you have to submit, as I mentioned, all the toxicology, packaging, bioefficacy trial data which you have conducted in India, with the various universities, maximum residue levels, and a host of data. Just for your understanding, the amount of data we submit is around 18 to 20,000 A4 sheets.
Wow.
Around 18 to 20,000 sheets are submitted. And it takes the registration committee 3 to 5 years, sometimes 8 years, to grant you registration. So that cost is no doubt around 20-25 crores. Then once I have my registration received, then I have to get my manufacturing license wherever I will formulate, manufacture, pack, or do whatever. So I have to get a manufacturing license from the state within which, so if I have to make it in Gujarat or Rajasthan or Bengal, I go to the state government and get the manufacturing license. And then my dealers and distributors have to get selling licenses from their respective district agriculture authorities, so that they know that that the product is sold by licensed approved people, just like pharmaceuticals. And then there is the issue of regular inspections by the manufacturing license guys, who invariably never do it. So they come back for renewal, and you put some agents and they get the renewal certificate. And then when it comes to markets, these inspectors, India has about 10,000 inspectors running all over the country. They are supposed to draw samples from the market, take them to the state pesticide testing laboratories for quality. If the quality is not good, they send you prosecution notices, file cases against you in the courts, and those are the costs and consequences of that. And I don't have to tell you how all this runs. So God bless India, as they say, God bless America.
Thank you, sir.
Swati, can you come in with your question?
Good afternoon, sir. So my question to you is on the role of technology in agriculture. We have had Simon Stray, founder of Agritech app, Plantix, on our online platform. Sir, according to her, Plantix has 1 million users per month from India, comprising 80% of total users. So how do you see technology revolutionizing Indian agriculture in the next 5 years?
Just tell me, who's this Plantix? What is their business? What is the app? What does the app do for them?
Through the app, they study the health of the plants, sir.
Okay.
They click a photo and they study the soil health and plant health.
This is what you call the use of artificial intelligence to Yes. Particularly, this will be very applicable for diseases and insects.
Exactly, sir. Mainly for the diseases, sir.
Yes. Now, the answer is quite simple. Technology has affected all of us. If you look back, I mean, I remember as a student when I was in college, I was gifted a calculator by my dear friend Amitabh's brother Bunty Bachchan. And that time he had paid 5,000 rupees for that calculator. And I can never forget, and 5,000 in 1963-64 was a huge amount of money. Just add another couple of zeros there. And what do we pay for a calculator today? The key point here is very simple. And I say this again with a great sense of pride. Indian farmers are very sagacious. They have very good understanding of what works for them, what does not. Almost 80 to 85% are now there on mobile phones. And they are now a very aware lot. They are far different than the 20th century farmers. So they are a very aware lot. They know exactly what works for them. They easily adopt the technology. For example, in PI, I am told that they have something like almost 40 million farmers in their direct connect. So whenever they launch a product or they want to launch some information, it goes and promptly they all get it. So as technologies will come, and if it works, you will see they'll be adopted. And definitely in 5 years, I will see that this will multiply greatly. There has been an explosion, if I may say, in this area, in startups. When I was heading CII's National Council on Agriculture, for the last 4 years, we have been holding a hackathon where the youngsters come and launch their startup options. And we have been sending the winners to Israel, because Israel is the nation, we call it the nation of startups, because we tie up with the Israelis Volcani Institute. And so we encourage a lot. So lots and lots of things are happening. And God willing, and again, you just saw in the RBI announcement that they have said that investment in startups will be treated as a priority investment. So now it will ease investments also. And taxation issues have been eased for them as well. As you know, there were a lot of legal cases going on. These have been sorted out. So with the regulatory framework becoming more enabling, the ability of the farmers to swallow it, I see great future.
Thank you, sir.
So Sheila, can you come in with your question?
Good evening, sir.
Sorry.
Good evening, sir. I have a question. You have formed 2 wholly owned subsidiaries, Pharma and Horticulture, to develop advanced intermediary molecules. Can you tell us a little bit about that? What would be the capex be, and what kind of growth are you looking for?
As I told you, I don't even sit on the board. I'm clueless about your question, to answer this question about my company, of which I'm the chairman emeritus. You know, I've been kicked upstairs. You have to understand that. So I can't give you any specific answer to this particular query. But if what they say they're going to do, the one thing I can tell you about PI, if they say something that they will do it, they will do it. As simple as that.
Thank you.
So that gives us a lot of confidence in your company for sure.
Thank you.
So I'll just take the last couple of questions. Meghna, can you come in?
Yes. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Sir, many products are going out of patent by 2022. So just as a student, I wanted to understand how would that impact a company like PI, sir?
Okay. Since 2000 AD till 2020, yes, about 180 molecules have come off patent. And they offer very great and good opportunity in India to be introduced and increase the product range that we have in India today. But unfortunately, the current regulatory regime and a certain section of the industry is very much discouraging the molecule discoverers to bring them into India. Because under the Indian policy, if somebody registers a molecule today, within months, and as I mentioned earlier, it costs about 25-30 crores to register it to begin with. And then it costs another 20-25 crores to actually market it, commercialize it. And if it happens to have a good traction and gets very good response, then immediately Indian companies are copying the molecules under what you call Me Too registration. Now, please don't mix it up with the Me Too that is popular in America and Europe.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Got it, sir.
So they go for that registration and they can get it for about 75 lakhs, 50 to 75 lakhs. Now, what it does is that it seriously discourages the molecule investor. Why should I put in 50 crores and putting all the mehnat, running my field staff, taking all the publicity, all the video, media, running hundreds of field staff to carry out farmer demonstrations, convince the farmers. It's a very long, very tedious, and a very expensive exercise. And somebody sees, wow, this molecule is going to make good market. It is really effective. Let me copy it. So that is a big dampener. Right. So because of that reason, we are not able to attract very many new for India molecules, though they may be off-patented. So a debate is raging now, and I hope, and I can tell you 70 to 75% of the industry supports the introduction of data protection. What this needs is what we call data protection. What is data protection? It is the 18 to 20,000 pages I referred to, which costs about 15 to 20 crores to bring it and get it registered. That is the data. Right. Now that product patent has expired, so the patent law is not applicable on that product. But with this data, if that is given protection for 5 years, for example, then many molecules will come. And incidentally, under the WTO, the World Trade Organization, under section 39.3 of the TRIPS agreement, and the TRIPS agreement says trade-related intellectual property rights, TRIPS. Under Article 39.3, it clearly says data shall be protected by individual countries for its unfair use by those who are not authorized to use it. For how many years? That has been left to the individual countries. India decided to take it for 3 years. The parliamentary committee approved it for 5 years. But when the new law came, that was not provided. Some political nonsense took place, and that has not happened. So we are trying, so some responsible members of the industry are trying to work to see that we can get the data protection so that we can get more molecules. Just for your information, 1,000 molecules are there. Even Vietnam has 500 molecules. America has 500 molecules. Brazil has about 450 molecules. Europe has it. India has just 250. And we have such a large area. And in that 250, about 45 molecules are more than 60 years old. We are not getting new technology. But some companies, because they are big manufacturers here, they are worried about competition from new molecules. Now, to my mind, at least as far as I'm concerned, and I'm a 100% Indian company, I think that's very unfair to my farmers. And so we have to fight against this narrow vision.
That is very insightful. Thank you, sir.
Welcome.
Thank you so much. I don't think we are getting enough of you, but we are running out of time, sir. So,
I think we should, yeah, I think so.
Yes, sir. So,
and Srinidhi,
so
before we sign off, a big thank you to Mr. Parikshit Mundra, because he connected us to you, sir, and that's how it could happen. Thank you, Parikshit. Thank you for connecting us. And sir, we dreamt of a greener future, and you implemented our dreams with your innovative solutions. Thank you so much for being with us today. And the future of Indians is in safe hands, with agriculture having a prosperous path ahead, and a country will certainly get back on the track to achieve the $5 trillion dream. And sir, this doesn't end here. We would love to meet you in person after this pandemic is over. And we wish you and PI Industries the best for the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Deeply appreciate. And thank you for the time and for your patience in listening to me. It's been a great pleasure.
It was a pleasure for us.
God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.